Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Welcome all climbers on the tree of knowledge. Find yourself a comfy spot on a sturdy bough and give yourself a tickle with a leafy branch of curiosity. It's time for another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now in today's episode, we're looking into how we can make the recycling game more successful. We'll take a sneak peek at a few new measures to protect young people from the demons within cyberspace. And we'll see how people on a small island in the West Indies have been able to cash in on AI. All that in good time, though. Right now, we should do the most important thing, which is to welcome to the microphone Matthew Dickerson. How are you, Matt, and what's been going on?
Yeah, look, very good, thank you. And what's been going on is a ground truth I'm going to talk about this week.
The ground truth.
I don't know that I've got enough scientific evidence to back up to say it's definite, but I've got a ground
really
truth.
strong anecdotal evidence.
That's right, and the plural of anecdote is anecdotes, not data. So as regular listeners will know, I'm a keen mountain bike racer. Now, keen doesn't mean good, just means keen. Okay?
No, that's right.
Don't confuse the two. And once every 2 years, there's a charity bike ride I participate in that's on the road. And I'm not a great fan of riding my bike on the road. Bitumen hurts if you fall off. Kangaroos seem to knock me off on the road when I'm out there. So I avoid it. But for the month before this particular event, I've got to get out on the road bike and start riding. So the last time I did that was 2 years. There's every 2 years this charity bike ride. So 2 years ago, had the road bike out.
And have you forgotten how much it hurt?
Well, I haven't fallen off yet, so that's good news.
Yeah.
But a strange thing has happened, which I am going to try and wrap some science around. Sometimes when I go for a bike ride, it's a road that I go, just a standard road. It's about 19 kilometres out and 19 kilometres back on this particular ride, and it goes out of town. And I'll put my phone in my back pocket on my riding jersey, as most cyclists do.
Right.
And off I go, and I sometimes might listen to the radio, stream something, for example, so I'm using my phone data. And 2 years ago, when I was doing the same training, I rode out this particular ride, and I'd ride back this particular ride and listen to the radio the whole way. No problems at all. This time, and I've only been training for a couple of days for this particular year, but every day the same thing has happened. So I think I've got some science to wrap around it. I ride out the same road, no problems at all, listen to the radio. I turn around and come back, and when I get in amongst some trees on the way back, and it's just a little bit of a dip that I go down, I lose the radio.
Radio silence.
Yeah. Now, the first day I thought, that's a bit unusual, what happened there? And then the next day, and I'm convinced now, having thought about it for 3 days.
It's the deep state.
It's possibly the deep state. If it's not the deep state, it's my body blocking electromagnetic signal. Now, we've talked about it before, how trees, gum trees in particular in Australia, if you live amongst a bunch of gum trees, then your signal, your mobile phone signal, for example, is often impacted because they've got lots of moisture in them.
Yeah.
So that moisture, as we know, is a good absorber of electromagnetic signal. Now, my body has got a fair bit of moisture in it, 70% water.
Does.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think as I'm riding away, the tower in town can get a good view of my phone sitting in my back pocket. So it manages to get to that signal even when I go through those same trees on the way out. Coming back, it's still got to get through those trees, but it's got my body between my phone on my back pocket and the tower in towards town. So I think my body's blocking it. Now, it didn't happen 2 years ago because 3G was still going 2 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Now we've moved on to 4G and 5G. We had 4G 2 years ago.
So progress in technology is sending us backwards. Is that what you're telling me?
Possibly. And again, I'm a lot of speculation here, but I'm speculating that the 3G I had 2 years ago was probably a lower frequency that I was using, maybe around the 850 megahertz frequency. And so with that frequency, it might have been able to get through my body okay. At higher frequencies with 4G and 5G, maybe it's using my body to block that signal.
So I'm just thinking about how this can be used. If you need to hide from the deep state, maybe you need to just go into that dip. Yeah.
And now I know where to go to hide and just put the phone on the right particular side of my body, and I should be right.
Oh, goodness.
So it's interesting, isn't it?
And any other evidence, of course, is going to be confirmation bias for you.
Absolutely right. So I've got no science to back it up, but if I see some science, I'll twist it to make sure that.
But no, it sounds good. It sounds plausible.
It does sound plausible.
Yeah.
Which
and
unfortunately,
so I'm going to give you points for that.
Thank you. A lot of conspiracy theories sound plausible too, but I think it's one of those things that you can't help yourself sometimes when you're doing things. Your mind is thinking, or my mind is thinking about the scientific basis. Some people just go, "I've lost signal," whatever. But I go, why did I didn't do
Yeah,
it 2
it
years ago.
starts
What's
with a
going
thought,
on?
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that happened before.
Yep.
And then why did that happen?
It's one of the great things I think kids have got is they're curious. They want to know.
Curiosity,
And
yes.
sometimes when we get to adults, you and I are lucky we're still kids, James. We're still curious about things. But
Yeah, but
that
we
curiosity,
lose the curiosity.
We do a bit
If we can
sometimes.
just keep that fostered, guys, we're on the right track.
So now I've got to put some sort of mount on my handlebars and then see if the same thing happened. So then I can see whether it was my body blocking it. So then it would be blocked as I travel away from town. Or maybe just wear my jersey back the front and put the phone down my front. Anyway, it's interesting.
Well, stay tuned, guys. We'll have more details on that in the future. Now it's time to turn and burn. Let's get stuck into our stories for today. Now, we all hope that with a trip to the doctors that the GP is going to find the source of your troubles and send you on your way with a solution. But it's easy to forget that medicine is not such an exact science, and sometimes tiny little signals can be overlooked. Well, some clever engineers have seen the gap that needed to be filled and have created an insurance policy for both doctor and for patient. So now doctors can get themselves a smart stethoscope, not a stethoscope, but a smart stethoscope for those tiny little murmurs that are so easy to miss, Matt.
What is a stethoscope?
A stethoscope is something I've just made up, and give me a moment, it's going to be something to do with stars.
I was thinking about stealth, maybe some sort of stealth mode. So it's fascinating, isn't it? The good old-fashioned stethoscope that we all know and love. And
Well, you're not a doctor unless you've got one of those wrapped around your neck.
correct. I assume that's why they still exist, because you think surely there'd be technology. But then when you walk into a hospital, there's a doctor. That's not a doctor because there's no stethoscope around their neck. So that's one thing they're used for, very important. Obviously, doctors still use them to listen to people. And I remember being a kid going to the
Obviously
doctor.
work, yeah.
Well, and the first thing you think of is just warm it up, please, doc, because it's so cold when I put it on your chest or on your back.
Toughen up, Matt.
That was my endearing memory of doctor as a kid. It'd be this cold stethoscope. But it was back in 1816 that was invented. And what a clever way to see something or hear something inside the human body without having the modern technology we've got now with MRIs and X-rays and all sorts of wonderful things we've got now. But the basic stethoscope has stayed the same, pretty much. I mean, it's been refined a little bit over the years, unlike the stethoscope, which has changed dramatically.
Which has changed just now in my mind, yeah.
But it stayed basically
it's just
the
a
same.
membrane with a tube attached to a tube that's attached to your ears.
It's effectively an amplifier.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, there's a couple of things that intrigue me about the good old-fashioned stethoscope. The first thing is we know as humans that we lose some frequencies of hearing as we get older. So if you go to your doctor and they're a young doctor, they've probably got better hearing than an older doctor. So when they put the stethoscope on you, they might hear things that an older doctor might not. But then an older doctor's heard lots of different things, so they might be able to pick
Knows
up
what
things.
to listen for.
That's right. And how do you train a doctor? Do they have MP3s when they're doing university and they go, this is what heart disease sounds like, or this is what a valve that's leaking sounds like? Do they just rely on them doing their internships and say, oh, I found something here, have a listen to this, intern doctor, and see what you can pick up here?
But then, there's got to be hazy shades of grey. Did I just hear that? Is that what I'm listening to?
And you don't want to have a doctor that jumps at shadows and sends them off for a full-blown MRI or some other test when it's just normal heart sounds.
Well, I also understand that when it comes to noises in the chest, little kids are also really hard to detect those noises. That
that makes sense because they've probably got a smaller heart, so there's probably less noise generated in general. So all very interesting. So researchers at the Imperial College in London and the Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust have come up with an AI stethoscope they've been trialling. And when you think about it, this is one of those things that AI makes perfect sense for because you can have a range of sounds. They could train it up on a range of sounds. This is what a leaky valve sounds like. This is what, I'm not sure, heart disease sounds like, whatever it might be, the various things. This is what they sound like. So they've got them sitting there in their memory bank. They're all the same. They've got a standard sampling, and then it's something that they clip onto someone's chest, for example, a bit bigger than a stethoscope. They do say about the size of a pack of cards, which I do worry about another SI unit we've just created.
I hope everyone's taking note of these for their own SI data.
That's right. We'll have a test at the end of the year. So we've got something about the size of a pack of cards. You clip on your chest, and within 15 seconds, that says, yep, everything's fine, or yes, there might be a problem here. And when they did some samples, so they did 12,000 patients across 96 GP surgeries in the UK that were using the AI stethoscope, and 109 surgeries that weren't using the AI stethoscope. Then they compared the results. And generally you would think that you would have about the same number across 12,000 people. You think you'd have the same number roughly in that population size. So they found that the AI stethoscope was 2.3 times more likely to show a potential heart failure. It was 3.5 times more likely to detect some sort of abnormal heart rhythm and 1.9 times more likely to detect heart valve disease. And a friend of mine recently had a new valve put in, and she had no idea she had a problem with her valve. She got a bit puffed at the top of a flight of stairs, just thought she was a bit unfit. And she went to the doctor for something completely unrelated, and the doctor was clever enough to say, let me just do a bit of a checkup. I can hear something there.
Yeah,
she had a new valve put in within a week. So getting to the doctor and getting that picked up is important. The thing that's exciting about this is it's fairly simple, this particular tool, fairly cheap. There's no reason this couldn't be rolled out to surgeries across the UK.
The world.
That's right, the world.
Yeah.
And then, as we're seeing with so many things now, you can buy these things potentially for your home. So you can buy little blood pressure testers in chemists and you go home and check your own blood pressure just as accurately, I'm sure, as the ones they have in a doctor's surgery, and probably they're the same brands as the ones they have in a doctor's surgery.
But you might have a doctor in a remote area who needs just to get a confirmation. I mean, surely the AI might say, yeah, it's definitely this. But you could also be sending that for a second opinion to someone in the city, a specialist,
That's
saying,
exactly
what
right.
do you reckon about this? And you could both be listening to the same thing.
And you'd have a recording that could be sent, as you say, given to other doctors. So it sounds pretty exciting. And sometimes we hear about things that AI is involved with. We go, oh, is this the end of mankind, or is this really a good use for this? But this, to me,
this is excellent.
It seems like a fantastic tool.
Lifesavers.
Lifesaver, absolutely right. It will be saving lives. The main thing now, I suppose, is just to get to the stage where we can roll these out across a much broader range of GP clinics across the world. But it does sound pretty exciting.
Well done, those clever folks in the UK. Let's face it, the recycling game can be a bit of a headache. Some of us just don't get what is okay and what is not okay to throw in the recycling bin. Recycling loads get contaminated with the wrong stuff and the whole lot just ends up in landfill anyway. Matt, it's probably time someone just invented a smart bin or something.
It is, isn't it? And I am reminded by The Simpsons, the teller of the future, and it was many years ago, it would have been at least 20 years ago, there was an episode that came out where Homer was a bit frustrated because he missed the bin collection and then yelled at the garbage collection man, and then they stopped picking up his bin, and so a whole range of comedic outcomes. But in the end, Homer stood to be the sanitation commissioner, and that's an elected position in council in the US, and he stood on a platform of, can't somebody else do it? So basically he was going to hire people to come in and take all the rubbish out, do everything for you. None of this taking the bin down your driveway. You've got a long driveway. I'm sure it's an interesting discussion each week. You say to the kids, are you taking the bin down? No, I can't this week, Dad. I'm doing homework, whatever.
It's a feud.
It's an ongoing discussion, that's right. And so he basically got elected because why not? If someone's going to do it for me, but he blew the annual budget within a month because he had to hire so many people to do it for them. So that wasn't the greatest solution. What they didn't have in that episode, though, was an automatic bin that would take the rubbish down to the end of your driveway for you. I love that idea. There's a range of ideas being explored. Now, most of these are being explored in the US, and there's a good reason for that. The average American generates 1 tonne of waste annually. That's per person. Now, I say that, and I'm looking down my nose.
But here in Australia, we're probably the same or worse.
I was thinking, that's terrible. Oh, we're probably just as bad.
When it comes to per capita, Australia likes to win the prize.
That's right. So there's a few things happening in America. One of them is a bin that, exactly as you said, takes that down to the end of your driveway. So a smart bin that you put your rubbish in, and don't worry about trying to sort out your recyclable from your landfill materials because people get it wrong. They contaminate the wrong bin, or they don't put enough in the other way. At the moment,
and if a load is tainted, I understood that they actually just waste a lot to landfill.
It's too difficult to sort it out at the moment with our current technology. So you're right. When they've got, oh no, some idiots put something in there, so that's it, just go to landfill. Around 80% of recyclable waste ends up in landfill. So we're doing all these things at the front end to get it right. You might even make purchasing decisions based on, oh, that's recyclable, I'll buy that, and then it ends up in landfill.
Anyway.
So these smart bins, first thing they do, put everything in there, no problems, except food. Food compost still needs to stay separate because that is definitely contaminated. But hopefully we can at least work out food scraps, Okay, that's different to, is that paper recyclable? Not sure. So put all your normal rubbish in. When it's full, it just wheels itself down to the end of the driveway and then sends a signal to your garbage collection service to say, oh yeah, I'm here now, because I said in my street, I've got a person that lives near me that doesn't generate a lot of waste, a single person living in the house by themselves. So you only see her bin go out every 2 or 3 weeks, but the garbage truck goes past every single week. So why waste your time having a garbage truck come past all the time when maybe people don't need their rubbish collected? So have it go down and have it basically, yep, I'm here ready. Now it might mean it stays there for a day or two rather than every time overnight, but less truck rolls means you're saving energy rather than sending out those trucks all the time.
And all the slowing down and accelerating, that's also burning more fuel than if it was just cruising at a normal speed. Yeah, if it didn't have to stop, then that would save energy.
That's right. The ultimate aim with all of this, and they're talking about in some of these solutions, basically electric garbage trucks, which makes sense because there's a lot of acceleration, deceleration.
Yeah.
And internal combustion engines are not great for that. And you hear them. You hear the is the noise that I hear anyway in my head. So essentially having an electric truck, but ultimately what you want is an autonomous one, because then it goes where it needs to go. It stops only at the spots it needs to stop at, and on it goes. So that's certainly a solution, but composting as well. So getting to the stage where you've got composting bins, in-home composting, or the one that I love is a centralised container. And I've been to Japan with a couple of studies, and one of those studies was a rubbish collection study that we did with a couple of communities in Japan. And I was blown away in Japan because you kind of think everyone does things the same way that you do, because it's a very arrogant way to live your life. But that's what we tend to do.
It's our microcosm.
It is, that's right. Now, when I went to Japan and we were talking to one of the councils there, they showed a centralised garbage collection bin type. It was a cage, I suppose would be a better way to describe it. And I said, what do you do here? And they said, that's where people bring their rubbish each week. And Mondays it's recyclables, and Tuesdays it's plastics, and Wednesdays it's... Really? Do people do that? Absolutely. People in Japan, they know which day is the right collection. They've got different collection liners or bags in their house that they put their different things in. And then Tuesday, I better take that down to that centralised area. The problem the council identified when I was talking about it was that some elderly people in particular, or people without transport, have a bit of a problem getting that to their little cage they've got to get to each week. So having
they do fewer trips and then just throw in the wrong bag? Or?
Oh, no, not the Japanese culture. They would never do that, right, James, please. Sorry to our
there,
Japanese listeners there. So you actually write your name on it as well. So when you put that rubbish in there, your honour...
Traceable.
That's right. Your honour would be offended if you put the wrong thing in, but it would be traceable as well. You can also put James Eddy when it's Matthew Dickinson dropping it off. So that's an issue. But that wouldn't happen in Japan either. But that was identified as a problem because, again, if I'm elderly and I can't drive a car any longer, or it's a bit heavy for me to carry that down, how do I get it there? You probably rely on neighbours, but it's not perfect. I said to this particular council, well, if you had a curbside collection service, you would be forever loved by your community. But again, the expense of that. But this smart bin idea, one of the concepts of that is to have in various neighbourhoods a collection point, a little bit like you see in Japan, but probably more than you see in Japan. And then your smart bin would drive itself to that area, empty itself into the little cage type structure, and then come back. So the garbage truck would only go to that centralised area rather than having to go to every single household. So we become accustomed to that. And we think we're all very clever in our community. We've got 3 bins, aren't we fantastic? We've got the red bin and the yellow bin and the green bin. Aren't we so good for the environment? But it's a bit hard for people to get it right, and some are collected fortnightly, some are collected weekly, and if we could just make it simpler for people, maybe that would be a bit better. So sensor technology, smart bins, composting.
Wheeling himself out to the curb.
I want to see another episode of The Simpsons where Homer stands for Sanitation Commissioner again, and this time he's going to use smart technology to win the race rather than have a bunch of people running around doing it.
Navigating online safety for discerning parents of kids and teens has been fraught with peril for decades now. Young people are exposed to adult content well before they should be, or even worse, they're lured into sharing explicit images of themselves and then caught in a predator's trap, of course. So, well, Matt, if nanny software isn't working like it should, then perhaps it might be soon possible to get a phone that automatically offers protection thanks to AI.
And we've got another story at the end, James, talking about some of the age restrictions that are being introduced, but this is really using the technology on a device to try and help kids one of the stats that scared me was that 1 in 5 high schoolers, so 20%, have felt pressured to share nude photos.
So, yeah, 20%.
That's scary, isn't it? I see people, or I hear stories about it where people have shared nude photos and then it goes everywhere and you think, oh, why did you do that? Surely you know that once it's out there, but I understand the pressure there. So 1 in 5, 20% have been pressured to share nudes.
We also have an issue with the fake nudes, and we've talked about that as well.
That's true too.
And
so
if you've got kids doing that to each other because they can't process the idea of serious consequences.
Yeah. And let's face it, the teenage brain is not fully developed, so it can't always work out consequences. So I was lucky enough that when my kids were a bit older, when my kids were getting their first phones, smartphones weren't around, and I do remember my kids, and I'm into technology, and so my kids probably got a phone a bit sooner than maybe they should have, but they got a little Samsung flip phone, was their first phone. So the most dangerous thing on that was they might have played Tetris or Snake
Far
for too
too
long.
much worm.
Yeah, that's it. That's about the extent of the danger. I think it might have even had a camera, but gee, you wouldn't be able to make out any images from that camera. That was a pretty poor quality camera, but it's a different world now. So HMD Global, so they're the ones that have bought the Nokia license, so they make Nokia phones. They've got a new smartphone, which I think is brilliant, absolutely fantastic for parents that have got kids that are about to get their first phone. And this whole thing comes from a concept with what's called the Better Phone Project. How can we create a better phone? And 37,000 parents and children have had some feedback into this Better Phone Project. And what they've come up with is a phone that can't show nudes on screen. And you go, oh, what do you mean it can't show nudes? It's actually set up with training from something like 22 million harmful images.
Well, it's not like there's a shortage of harmful images on the internet.
Exactly right. And it's scanning the screen constantly. And if it picks up a nude, for example, any part of a nude, anything that's something that may be a harmful image, then it just simply puts an overlay on the screen, a dark pink overlay where you can't really see what's on screen, and you've got to get rid of it off screen before you can keep using the phone.
Right.
Now, this is embedded into the operating system. It's not an app that you put on that the kids go, that's right, I'll just take that app off. It's part of the operating system. To stop this working, you stop the phone working. When you get the phone, it's a clean phone. It's got that embedded in the operating system, but it's got no apps. It's got no access to any social media sites. It's basically got the ability to make a phone call, send a text, and that's it. You can take photos, of course, but if they're nude, they'll be blocked. So pretty basic needs. And then your parent or guardian has the ability to give you access or remove access. So, Mum, could I get access to social media site A? Yeah, we'll give you a go with it. We'll see how you go with it, but I'll have a look in a week's time or 2 weeks' time and I'll see you going, and then I'll remove it. Because one of the things is that kids are typically cleverer with phones than their parents. The parents will say, can you help me with my phone, rather than the other way around. So having the parent with the ability with a simple app just to control things is incredibly important. But I did love the technology. Now, there are some minor issues. There are some false positives. So if you've got a picture of someone in a swimsuit, in a bikini in particular, then it'll block that. And I go, that's okay. If the worst thing that happens is it stopped someone looking at an image of someone in a pair of Speedos or a bikini, then it's not the end of the world. That's probably okay.
Probably not the most important photo, but if it is the most important photo, there'll be other ways to get around it,
Well,
not with that phone.
Well, that's right. You would send the image to someone else and they could look at it on their phone, so Mum and Dad could look at it and go, yep, that's fine. That's just your sister down at the beach saying, look at this wonderful beach I'm on. That's okay. Yeah. But again, I just do like the idea of it, and I like the idea that they understand, HMD Global understands that you're dealing with kids who have got some pretty clever ideas and some different ways of thinking about how to get around things.
Yes.
So build into the operating system.
Human brain's programmed for problem solving.
Exactly right. Yeah. And kids are very good at it. And so they'll get around things. So I just think all of that makes sense. It's not too expensive. It's about $800 in Aussie dollars. So it gives you a phone that I would call a pornography incompatible phone. Now, it's not going to stop harmful words on a social media site, for example, if you give your kids access to it. This is all focused on harmful images. So violence as well. I'm focused on the pornography side of it, but violence as well.
But one would assume, and look, without becoming a police state, a nanny state, this sort of protection isn't isn't a terrible thing. I think it's an important thing.
Yeah.
That there might be the capacity later on to protect from extreme violence. You know, I was always worried about when ISIS was out there and they were doing nasty things to people that they'd held hostage, and then they were putting it on the internet, and whether or not kids were watching that. You know, that sort of graphic violence, so worrying, and it's hard to process.
When it becomes normal, when you think that is normal, that's a bit of an issue as well. So quite clever. I just think for anyone out there worried about that first phone for their kids and worried about the harmful effect, but then all my friends have got one. I need to be able to get a text message from a friend. They're organising going to a footy match on the weekend.
Yeah.
All those things. You are a bit left out if you don't have a phone. I'm thinking about high schoolers rather than primary schoolers. You're a bit left out if you don't have one. And we used to have a very selfish problem when our kids were younger. If they'd not do the right thing and we might take their phone off them, then it would be, how do I know when they finish netball training? Because you relied on the text from the kids.
Yeah,
so then
it's a way to communicate.
Sometimes the kids would get their phone back early for our convenience rather than our kids' convenience. I'm talking about all the terrible parenting habits I've got here, aren't I? So, anyway,
but this presents an option at least for parents who are really, really worried and want to put in some protections. And as I said, it's a start of maybe something that might be able to progress onto something other and bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
For the longest time, we've been suffering lazy, lagging internet speeds here in Australia. Anyone who's spent time overseas will point this out to you in a heartbeat. But things are about to get revved up down under at last, Matt.
They are. It's exciting. I am genuinely
You are
excited about this. This is finally, I just feel like New Zealand, when they're ahead of us, that's just hurts me to the core. And many countries have had gigabit speeds, some even multi-gigabit speeds for some time now. So US and UK have had fantastic speeds for a long time. Hong Kong's been great. They've all had multi-gigabit speeds on their internet. Even Brazil, Singapore, Taiwan have had good gigabit speeds. So I felt like we've been a bit behind. Now, we have finally got gigabit speeds recently, but this latest upgrade from NBN will give all the retail service providers access to the top tier, and these are consumer plans. So there's higher plans you can get if you're going to get a dedicated, very expensive business grade, but these are just consumer plans, or even sometimes they're called business consumer plans, but they're just available to you with your normal retail service provider. Maximum speed, 2,000 megabits per second download, and the one that I get more excited about is 500 megabits per second upload. And most people don't take too much notice of the upload speed.
No.
They're just worried about how fast can I get that movie downloaded.
Yeah.
But when you consider that a lot of businesses are doing things like video conferencing, transferring data among sites, even just doing online backups now. Online backups are very common out there with different companies out there. I personally use Backblaze as an online backup tool, fantastic tool. You're relying on those upload speeds. So that's been something, even when we've had gigabit download speeds in the past, the upload speeds haven't been great. But now having a 2 gig download speed and a 500 meg upload speed, that's pretty exciting. So that's good. And these are all reasonably priced.
Crack out the party poppers, because
Exactly.
we've waited long enough.
We have waited long enough. Now, there's a few bits of bad news around it. Some bad news we can solve, some we can't necessarily solve. So at the moment, these speeds are all only available to people that have got fibre to the premises and cable, HFC. But cable doesn't have quite the same speeds, the upload speeds, as the fibre to the premises.
And that's just a capacity problem. You just can't.
Yeah, with fibre to the node, the last step, that last bit of copper still can't handle these speeds, although we went way further than we ever thought possible with copper. You still can't get those final speeds. And you go back when there was a change in government back many years ago when fibre to the premises was going to be rolled out everywhere, and then a change of government, no, we'll make it cheaper by going fibre to the node. Yeah. Everyone that's in technology said, no, how long is it going to be before you just have to upgrade?
Yeah.
And we're at that point now. Now, there is a thing with NBN called COAT, and again, it's an acronym, so it's a good thing. That means that they've thought about it. Change of access technology. So if you've got fibre to the node, there are certain areas across the nation that have gone to a COAT area. So if you're in one of those areas and you say, I'd like those faster speeds, thank you, you can get a change from fibre to the node to fibre to the premises.
Is that likely to be a big expense to the consumer?
No, there's no cost to the consumer
in
in these various areas. The only cost is you've got to go to one of the higher plans.
Right.
If you're only staying on the same plan, then, hold on, you don't actually need.
Why do you actually need it? You're just looking for the luxury.
And so with fibre to the node, you've typically got speeds of 100 megabits per second download. So it's a haves and have not, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
2,000 or 100. And the crazy part, in some locations, I know in where we live, there are 4/7 of our community that's got fibre to the premises, and 3/7 that's got fibre to the node, because we've got 7 what's called FSAMs, fibre serving area modules, and those FSAMs, each one can be fibre to the node or fibre to the premises. So it just happens that 4 of our FSAMs are fibre to the premises and 3 are fibre to the node. So literally there are streets in our town, one side of the street has got fibre to the premises, across the road.
Cultural divide.
That's right.
Yep.
That's, you've got fibre to the node there, sorry, buddy. So most of those areas are being able to upgrade. Some you still can't. Fixed wireless, that's still a problem. You can't get those faster speeds with fixed wireless. But ultimately, you'll roll out fibre to the premises pretty much everywhere, maybe not some rural areas where it'll be expensive to do that. But that's pretty exciting. So that's all exciting, all happening. But the other thing is just be aware of what modem you've got. So if I go back, and I am talking specifically about Telstra modems now, only because I'm very familiar with the Telstra modems. So the original Telstra modem was the Telstra Gateway when NBN was first being rolled out around, say, 2014, 2015. And the Telstra Gateway had Wi-Fi 4. That was the latest standard at the time. And Wi-Fi 4, if you're using one MIMO, so that's basically one antennas, one streaming, if you like, then you get speeds of up around maybe 72 megabits per second. So your Wi-Fi might be 72 and you might get 2,000 megabits per second. Well, there's no point if you're only getting 72. Yeah. Gen 2 came out around 2018, Gen 2 modem from Telstra. They had Wi-Fi 5. Gen 3 came out 2022, Wi-Fi 6, and the latest standard now, the Gen 4 modem just being rolled out in preparation for these new NBN speeds is Wi-Fi 7. So you really want to be, if you want those extra speeds, you really want to have Wi-Fi 7 to be able to say, I've got the fastest speeds available for my Wi-Fi and also the best range as well. But that's part of the issue as well. I know in my house I've got 4 wireless access points. I only had 3 at one stage, but one of my daughters complained that when she was on the toilet. No, bedroom was fine.
Bedroom was fine when she was on the toilet.
I did testing in bedrooms, but I didn't test in the toilet, James. My error, my silliness. So I had to put next to
another Wi-Fi access point.
That's right. And so she was okay. Then she could get full Wi-Fi speeds in the toilet. That was okay. So
you mentioned that, so some people only need 100 megabits per second or whatever. And so there's no point getting the fibre to the premises. But I think this is like, I remember when I first started school, something might have happened at school and the teacher would ask, does your mum have the phone on? Like not everyone had the phone on. We had the phone on, but not everyone had the phone on, clearly. So, yeah, mum's got the phone on. Yeah, but not everyone obviously did. So, but that wasn't long before everyone had the phone on.
That's right.
It won't be long before everyone's using over 100 megabits per second.
Correct. And so the modern equivalent is, do you have FTTP at your house? But I've actually talked to real estate agents as well, and they've said that it makes a difference, maybe not so much for how much you get for your house, but it excludes some buyers. And I put myself in that category. If I was looking for a house, I would only contemplate an FTTP place.
You don't want to cut yourself short.
I couldn't.
Does it have 4 wireless points?
That's right. Yeah. So that's a second part to be aware of. And again, some people think it's just how fast you can stream your shows. And one person, when I talked about this, they said, so that means if I had a movie that was 2 gigs in size, I could download in a second. Not quite, because it's megabits per second, and we talk about gigabytes, but that's only a factor of 8. So that means you could effectively download a 2 gig movie in 8 seconds. Do you really need to do that? Do you really need to do
we
that?
need this movie and we need it now.
That's right.
I can't wait 8 seconds.
And so we might get a bit frivolous about that. Well, that's a bit silly. But I think where you'll see these...
There'll be a situation somewhere someone needs that movie in 8 seconds.
Well, maybe. I was more thinking of things like telehealth, and you might in the past have had to go into a certain location to see a consultant that was located hundreds of kilometres away.
Yeah, sure.
But why not do that from your home and be able to access a remote stethoscope that the doctor could listen to your heart and have that good speed to be able to hear those upload?
Real-time MRI or something like that.
Absolutely. So all these things you need where you want to be able to have those extra things. And again, I probably think it's more about the upload than the download, but it's exciting. And I don't know that we can say we're now a leader across the world, but at least we're catching up, and I'm keen to see the next annual survey of speeds across the world, because normally we're down in the 20s and 30s, a lot of countries ahead of us, so this should get us up there maybe into the top 10 even, possibly.
Desirable destination to move to, maybe.
Maybe, exactly.
Now, full disclosure here, I'm no coder. I can't even pretend to be a coder, but I hear that when you're coding, it's good to be able to see at a glance what you've written way back, 30, 50 lines ago, apparently. So the landscape screens of your standard laptop just don't cut the mustard. It's got to be portrait all the way or bust. Now, Lenovo have heard the screams of frustration and have come to the rescue of coders the world over, Matt.
They have indeed, and we've seen a few things from Lenovo. We talked before about the rollable screen, the one that rolls out a bit higher.
And you can get a little bit extra height on your screen.
Yeah, exactly right. So you start with a normal size and then roll it out a bit.
Yeah.
They did have a transparent screen with something they did before, showing off at some show. And this one's not a bad one. I remember having a staff member years ago. All my staff have got at least 2 screens on their desk. And I walked into this particular staff member's office one day, and these 2 screens are in portrait mode. And I went, that's not bad, because he spent most of his time looking at Word documents, looking at things in a typical portrait mode. So in landscape, you might have your screens and you might have 2 or 3 of those pages on screen, but we kind of see a page normally in portrait mode. So that seemed to make sense.
Do I think of almost all the work I do would be in portrait mode as a teacher. And so I'm trying to scan a whole page, and I'm used to scrolling up and down.
Yeah, there you go. So
or looking at it with tiny, tiny print.
That's right. You fit more pages on screen, but the print's so small. So this makes sense. And this is
such a great idea.
It is. So it's a mechanical. The notebook hasn't been released yet. It's a prototype they've shown off to show this is what we could do, which many companies do to see if there's excitement, and then do we go and produce it properly? Yes, we do, because there's enough excitement out there. So this is a mechanical screen. So you open your notebook, and then literally you would spin it, not in some sort of virtual way, you would physically spin it around to be in portrait mode rather than landscape. So that's pretty clever for a start. Then I started thinking about the placement of the camera. So much video conferencing we do now. Well, if you had it at the top of the screen in landscape, well, you turn it around and then you're looking at your head sideways. Our listeners can't see, but I'm now turning my head sideways while I'm trying to talk to you. So I wonder what they do there. Do they have 2 cameras on there? That probably wouldn't be so hard to have one at the top of the portrait and one at the top of the landscape. But I thought that was quite good. So code is definitely, I would think, because code is often written down and it's normally not very long lines.
Yeah.
Anyone that works in, say, Word regularly, that would make sense. If you're working in videos or doing things with photos, landscape probably makes more sense. It's the way we look at the world in a landscape mode. But it just gives us another option. It gives us more ways to look at things. In the past, we've maybe fitted how we work as humans around the technology that's available to us. But, gee, wouldn't it make more sense to
design your technology to suit yourself?
That's right. So I thought that was quite good. So the whole idea will be one laptop, 2 orientations. One laptop to use how you want to use it. If you're doing video some days and doing coding other days, then this is the perfect solution for you. So I love where they're going with just different ideas. Will they all cut the mustard? Will they all be used in production models? No, probably not.
We won't know until we see what the sales are like and see how many other people want to do copycats. And
I think they'll also listen to this podcast and go, well, if Matthew and James are talking about it, there's something in that. So maybe we should go and produce this.
Yes. The AI revolution has hit us all in different ways, some good and some bad. It all makes news fodder for us for years to come. But for the people of Anguilla in the Caribbean, the AI revolution just brings good news every day, day in, day out, as the dollars just keep rolling in. And it's all down to just a case of dumb luck, Matt.
Dumb luck. I love this. I remember back when we were first rolling out the internet. I wasn't doing it personally, but I was involved.
What a big trolley. Welcome to the internet, children.
Is that all you can fit in there? So when I was connecting clients with domains and email addresses in the first place, I was a big fan of having your own domain name. So that just screamed to me that you're more professional than having, back in those days, Hotmail was probably the thing that everyone had. So it was always one to get. And back in those, I think things like .com and .com.au were rolled out in the mid-80s. But by the time some clients were getting onto it, kind of mid-90s, late 90s, then their domain name was gone. So rather than come up with a sort of maybe close to your business name domain name, I used to go looking around the world to see what else I could use. And the .cc domain was a popular one. So I've got clients who still, to this day, use .cc. So It might be businessname.cc. And that was from the Cocos Islands. And it was no big deal. It was just like the Cocos Islands. There's a nice short one. It looked a bit like com. And let's go and register.cc. You talk to a client, you could have this thing that's almost your business name.com.au or your exact business name.cc. And they go, oh, let's go to the .cc. So that was cool. It didn't take off hugely because .cc didn't mean that much, apart from if you were a chip manufacturer, if you had your CC chip something. But there are other domains now, other extensions that people like to get excited about. And the one that's really, well, actually go back a step, the .tv domain was big back in the, I reckon probably late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So there's the little island Tuvalu. How's that for pronunciation?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
Their extension was .tv. So anyone that had a TV show or a new streaming show, to make it sound like they were really customised, you'd have your TV show .tv. And like that was pretty cool. So then the latest one, of course, is Anguilla's extension is .ai. So
Boom.
anyone that wants to have something that's linked to AI, that's really obvious that you're an AI company, well, what other domain extension would I go for but .ai? So this is a small Caribbean territory, 16,000 residents. .ai domains went to US $32 million in 2023. That was 20% of the government's income. The next year, 2024, it went to US $39 million. 25% of the government income from domain names being registered.
All they have to do is sit there and allow the money to roll in.
And it's better than that because you have to renew your domain. It's not a one-off thing. You don't buy that domain and own it forever. You've got to renew that domain, whether it's a .com, .com.au, CC, whatever. You've got this ongoing revenue. Whatever AI remains big, and you would say, well, of course it's going to remain big, but .tv, that income stream has fallen off for some people in the government in Tuvalu. So will AI still be the domain extension of choice for years to come? My logic would say a long time, yes.
Yeah.
But it's certainly something that you're relying on people across the world. So they've just done.
But even if it lasts for a little while longer,
take it. It's kind of free money.
Building roads, it's building hospitals.
That's right.
Yeah.
So typically they're being registered for a couple $100 for a 2-year registration, which is kind of normal. It's not like they're trying to really profit out of that. But some popular domains are going to auction. So, for example, Cloud.ai was sold for US $600,000. Law.ai, US $350,000. The most popular one, or the dearest one so far, is U.ai, $700,000. So people are profiting out of these. I don't know what happens with the renewal of that, whether it's a one-off payment, you just pay the normal renewal fee in a couple of years' time. If they're smart, they would say, let's work out a way to go and do that. One of the things they've done is they've just signed a 5-year management deal with a US firm called Identity Digital to do the registry operations, because in the past they were using their own local infrastructure, but this is a small island. The maximum height above sea level is 65 metres. They're subject to things like hurricanes and weather events. Yeah. So suddenly, sorry, we can't register those domain names at the moment because our data servers are underwater or hit by a hurricane. So they've got it all off-site now on the US mainland to be able to take care of that. So what a great revenue stream for them for a certain amount of time. And it's important for them because Anguilla has no personal tax income, no capital gains tax income, no corporate tax income. So getting revenue from domain registrations is pretty important for them.
Pretty important. So I'm just thinking about maybe, I wonder who has got .je already registered, whether or not I can register it myself, and maybe one day it'll take off.
You can be.
Just on a long shot. It's a long shot, but .je could just explode.
So you want James Eddy to be its own top-level domain. I like the way you're thinking. I like it. Because there's been some other ones. Montenegro had .me, and that took off. So people are registering JamesEddy.me, for example, is another domain. So that's a popular one still to this day. So this whole thing, isn't this crazy, this whole industry of domain registration? Yep. You go back 40 years, there was zero industry of this. Now we've got an industry generating, well, in one extension alone, $39 million US in 1 year.
Amazing.
Incredible.
The global energy crisis continues to press us, driving costs, also driving think tanks and problem solvers ever onwards in search of novel solutions to wide-scale problems. Europe and America are now just emerging from what has been a cracking summer, so it may not surprise you to find out that a fair whack of the energy budget goes into cooling large buildings. Matt, the developed world wants comfort in difficult times, so what's the solution then?
Well, the solution is an old solution. Sometimes you go back in history.
We're going to build ourselves igloos or something?
Well, almost. Way back before we had modern cooling, then you had natural ice that was transported by harvesting ice from lakes that were frozen. So you'd go to an area, take America for example, you go to say the top ends of America, maybe into Canada, and you would harvest ice. You'd put it on a barge or maybe you put it on something out on sea and you'd transport it down and you'd deliver that ice to places that need to be cooled. And so you'd hope that ice wouldn't melt enough in the transportation process to then cool it down.
A bit of it's got to last, surely.
If it's a big enough chunk of ice, surely it lasts. So that seems like a fairly clumsy way to cool places down. But now we're doing something similar. Now, I hadn't heard this term before, but there are peaker plants, P-E-A-K-E-R, peaker plants. Now, normally in generating power, you've got large, say, for example, coal-fired power stations that are going all the time and they may turn those up and down, but it's a slow process. You can't really just flick it on a bit higher now and a bit lower. But there are peaker power plants and they just generate electricity when you need the peak power. So they are ones that you can turn on and turn off when you need that power. But it's expensive to do that. And in a hot summer, air conditioning, you need it on during the day, not so much at night time. So you turn these peaker power plants on. Obviously, you're generating more pollution and you're generating more cost with that. So one of the solutions they've come up with, and there's one particular company in particular that's going hammer and tong with this, is they're creating ice in the middle of the night when they've got access to cheaper power. And then they're using that ice to help cool down buildings. So, for example, they've got one 11 Madison, a 30-storey Manhattan skyscraper, and in summer they use about 227,000 kilograms of ice daily to keep that building cool. Now, for those who aren't familiar with
set up in front of an enormous fan and just blow cold air over it.
Well, a range of things, and I'll get to that in a moment. But for those not familiar with kilogram as an SI unit, the 227,000 kilogram is the equivalent of 3 packed city buses. A more familiar SI unit. So what do you do?
So sorry, they're melting 3 buses worth of ice per day.
3 packed city buses worth of ice a day to keep this particular building cool. Now, this company called Trane, T-R-A-N-E, has got about 4,000 ice battery installations is what they're calling it, ice battery, across the world. But that's not many when you consider that the US alone has got 6 million commercial buildings. So it's a long way to go before you get there. Now, what do you do? What do you do with the ice? Do you say, here's a bit of ice, suck on that, and it'll cool you down?
Just sit it on a bowl on your desk.
That's right. It'll cool things down. So obviously, what you've got to do is then work out a way to have that ice that's melting to then have some way of taking air across that ice and then circulating that around the building. So you're designing it from the ground up, typically you would think, to be able to distribute that cool air around the building, which all sounds pretty clumsy, but this is a solution we're getting to. To give you an idea, they're talking about, again, Trane Technology says that if you can use ice batteries, you can cut your cooling costs by about 40%. Obviously, there's a fair bit of installation work, and Trane is doing that, so they're probably in their best interest to say, put our system in and it'll reduce cooling. But I can see buildings being designed now in the future to take advantage of ice batteries rather than a normal HVAC system. So it's a fascinating thing. I just
know that the bulk of our electricity bill goes on our air conditioner.
Yep, heating and cooling, exactly right. So this is a method to be able to use that ice in a certain way. Now, one of the things they're doing, and this is where your students will be excited because it's all about material science, they're working out better materials to be able to have in the ice to be able to freeze and then let that ice go at a more controlled rate. So, for example, they're using barium-based particles, and what they're trying to do is basically get maybe some nucleation particles in the freezing process to be able to freeze it at different temperatures and release that in a more controlled manner. So that sounds like a lot of work from a science perspective, apart from just the take a bunch of ice and then use it to cool the building. So if you could get ice that melts slower, if you get ice that freezes at maybe not 0, maybe it freezes at 2 degrees Celsius, for example. If you could work out ways to do that better, then you're going to use that ice more effectively. So there's a lot of work to be done here from a scientific research perspective.
Amazing.
So quite fascinating.
Now, this next story is going to draw out the physics nerds in a big way. Most normal people don't have a lot of use for a spectrometer. Let me get that word out. Most people don't even know what a spectrometer is. But Matt, if you do know what I'm talking about and you do know why they're handy, the good news is that thanks to modern technology, they're now really small and really handy to use.
That's right. Now, do you guys get to use a spectrometer at school?
We do use a spectrometer at school, actually, in our physics class.
And so do you
chemistry.
get students to put various materials in front of that to see what might be in there?
So we want to have a look at the spectra. We've got these little gas, they're gas discharge tubes is what they are.
Right.
And so some have got nitrogen, some have got helium, some have got mercury, some have got argon, different gases in them. And so we turn each one on and we get the kids to have a look at them through the spectrometer and see how the spectra are different.
Yeah, right.
So we're able to use spectrometers to see what things are made of.
Correct. And so that's the
chemical
obvious use
composition.
of a spectrometer to see what is in that, whatever the device, substance, compound might be.
Yeah.
And you use that because you're obviously being able to narrow down very accurately what is in that particular substance.
It's all about exciting the electrons in the atoms and getting them to fall back to their lower energy states.
And using normal SI units, how big would you estimate your spectrometer is?
It's at least it's be 2 packs of cards.
Right, at least.
It's about a 1,620th of a swimming pool.
Oh, wow, that big.
Yeah. Sorry, no.
So it's not something you necessarily carry in your pocket easily.
Well, yeah, it's a couple of packets of cards. So yeah, it's a bit bulky.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So to get that same technology down into your smartphone, for example,
Yeah.
just as a normal feature, sounds pretty exciting. And that's where some researchers have gotten to. They've built a spectrometer, and when I say the spectrometer, the detection device, a few square millimeters in size. What you could do with these is put it as part of your camera on your phone.
Wow.
So you could actually use your phone to be a spectrometer.
Well, can I also say with our spectrometers, because they do involve a little triangular prism that splits up the light and disperses it to get these bandings of light, is that some kids find it very hard to actually see the spectrum as well. So they're staring at these discharge tubes and seeing nothing. But if it was on your phone, I'm going to guess that it's digitally converting, and so it's obvious you can just see it.
That's right. So when you get the kids to look at the various lights that come back or the various spectra that comes back, they're trying to look at that to see what's made up of that rather than the spectrometer saying, oh, this looks like it's got some neon.
Well, what we want to tell is that there's a pattern for hydrogen, there's a pattern for argon, there's a pattern for neon, there's a pattern for mercury.
Right. But the spectrometer doesn't say, oh, you've got some hydrogen there.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
No. It's not digital at all. It doesn't do any conversion.
Yeah, okay. So that's exactly what this will do by combining the little tiny sensor in your camera and then shining it at an object. It will then give you a readout on your phone to say, oh, it looks like you've got these particular compounds or elements made up there. So fantastic. Again, all very much in the experimental. What they've gotten at this stage is a single tiny photo detector that, as I said, is about a square millimetre or a couple of square millimetres in size. It's not on a phone. You can't go and buy a phone tomorrow with this built into it. But imagine the first phone manufacturer that says, sure, lots of phone manufacturers have got something that will take a photo or a video, but do you have a spectrometer built in?
Well, see, and that would mean that you could, people have got a lot of amateur astronomers out there, so you could be focusing on anything that's sending light back, and with your spectrometer, you could find out what sort of elements are in the astral object that you're looking at.
And I was actually thinking of things like agriculture. Surely you could use it to assess maybe plant health. Maybe you could use it to detect spoilage in your food, so you could look at a food and see what's being emitted.
Food and drug. Any drugs or food that you want to analyse, you could probably do it with that.
What about water quality? So you could look at water and see what was in
potentially you
that?
might be able to see things. Yeah. Generally, I thought the spectra they had to be vaporised. So I wonder if you might have to treat the sample that you're looking at. It might need to be heated up or whatever. But
So it sounds pretty impressive to my mind. You could even do, for example, some sort of biomedical diagnostics. We talked before about the AI stethoscope, but maybe you could breathe out and it could detect what's in your breath. I mean, I'm speculating here, of course, but once you've got a very advanced scientific tool like a spectrometer in your phone, then it's just a bit of the imagination to see what else you can wrap around that to see how you can take advantage of that.
Do you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about because there was one year where we have a thing called a cathode ray oscilloscope. It's quite a technical piece of technology there that we use in physics, but ours wasn't working. And I was frustrated and I was kicking the dirt and cursing. And one of the kids goes, "It's all right, I got one in my car." And we went and got a cathode ray oscilloscope. And we used that guy's cathode ray.
So why did he have a crow in his car?
Because he did some electronic stuff. He was right into electronics.
Okay.
And so, so we were able to use that. And that was really, really handy. So I'm just waiting for the time where the kid goes, "It's all right, sir. Don't worry about your hopeless spectroscopes, spectrometers, I should say. Well,
just use my phone."
I'll just use my phone, yeah.
That's right. And actually, I think the first thing that will happen is you'll get some sort of clip-on. You'll buy your mobile phone, and it will be a very advanced camera, and then there'll be a little clip-on that someone will sell for $50, and you'll clip it over your camera, and they go, "Oh, now, and put this app on, now you've got a spectrometer." So until they build them into the phones. So, fascinating.
Now, if you're listening to our episode today from beyond the Aussie coastline, then you may not be aware that the Aussie government is pushing social media platforms to prevent under-16s from holding accounts, and that is due to kick in mid-December. It's a bold measure and a source of great scepticism here in Australia. But Matt, what are the ins and outs of this bold new measure that we're headed for?
I'm going to try and talk about this briefly today because I guarantee that you and I will talk about this many times before the 10th of December this year, and then many times after the 10th of December when it comes into play. It's been something that the Australian government has been working at for some time to get to a solution that's workable. And here's the problem. We generally agree as a community that maybe having under 16-year-olds exposed to pornography and lots of social media stuff is maybe not great for them. Now, some people disagree with that, but in general, our community as a whole has said, yes, we should keep under 16-year-olds away from that. That's okay. Then how do you do it?
Well, so some social media platforms we know, there's bullying and there's, cyberbullying is a really big thing, and so we're trying to protect kids through that as well. But how do you actually stop these people from?
And I don't want to impose our standards, our thoughts on everyone, because some people out there say, no, that's a terrible thing. But the community in general, via the Australian government, is generally saying, yes, it's probably not good. When you weigh up the pros and cons, there are many more cons than there are pros, so let's keep the under 16-year-olds off those sites. But then it comes down to how. Now, what you're trying to do in this is you're trying to say, I've got to have a method of keeping under 16-year-olds away, but not make it really difficult for people that are over 16 that are able to access these sites, not to make them jump through so many hoops, because if I'm a social media provider, I want to make it easy to use my site.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to get the Australian government offside, or maybe I don't care that much, but I probably don't want to deliberately do that. And if I'm providing various content, if I'm providing pornography, I don't want an Australian government to shut me down completely because I'm making money out of the people that are legally allowed to do it. But I also take the point that maybe keep under 16-year-olds off that site. So this is the problem. So the first thing they've done is they've looked at some trials with what they're calling age assurance. So I look at my camera on my device and I either have some photos taken, post some videos, or use that to record some videos of me. And with the technology they've had so far, they've been able to get plus or minus 18 months, 85% of the time.
Wow.
So that means that a 14-and-a-half-year-old can access some sites, maybe, and a 17-and-a-half-year-old can't access some sites.
Might not be able to.
That's right. But it's not just exactly 7-and-a-half-year-old, obviously, plus or minus 18 months, 85%. So it might mean a baby-faced 25-year-old, damn it, I can't get access to Facebook because, again, you might have a site that's running now, but on the 10th of December, if you're under 16, that should be blocked. Now, presumably a 25-year-old, there'll be enough things in there that will allow you to keep accessing that. But a 7-and-a-half-year-old, maybe not.
There are some 12 or 13-year-old boys growing mustaches out there too.
And that's the other side of it, isn't it? Exactly right. So all of the mainstream social apps, so TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, X, Facebook, so all those sites come under this umbrella, and pornography sites as well come under this umbrella. And I don't know pornography sites off the top of my head, so I'm not going to try and name those 4XRUs or something. I don't know, but that's a beer probably. Sorry, just XXXRUs. So that's a problem. Now, the real issue here as well is the Australian government has said the responsibility sits with the provider of that. You've got to show that you've taken reasonable steps to stop under 16s accessing your site. So then maybe they will, because there are some fines in place. You can be fined up to $49.5 million, which is chump change for some of these sites, I understand. But it's at least something that might be some sort of persuasion to maybe try and take some steps. But if you just go, whatever, middle finger to the Australian government, you're not taking reasonable steps. So once we go through that first step of doing some sort of age assurance, then you've got government ID. Now, government ID or some sort of state or government issued ID, so driver's license, for example, that's fine because most people over 16 have probably got something. You might get your L plates at 16, you might get a passport. Under 16s, it doesn't matter because you're not able to access it, so you don't need to prove how old you are. But then again, if you're over 16, you don't have to have a driver's license.
No.
So then you've got an age card or an identity card. That's more relevant when you're 18 to be able to get into pubs, for example. So at 16, do you always have some sort of government-issued ID? Not necessarily. I can, wait to turn 16, I can get onto Facebook. Well, you've got to prove that you're 16 then with some other way. And then it continues to monitor. So the sites at the moment have got this continual monitoring. You prove that you're over 16, but hold on, you seem to be accessing a lot of sites that are advertising kids wear, so kids' clothes. Are you doing that because you've got a child? Hold on, you're meant to be 17, you probably haven't got a child, but maybe you're looking at those sites because you're not actually 16 yet. So it looks at your ongoing behaviour. But of course, the frustration is it's not like you can just ring up and say, hey, I really am 16, here's my proof, because it's all done by AI and monitoring of your behaviour.
Yeah,
so that's the frustration for all of these. Who do I talk to prove that I'm 16? No, you've got these steps to go through to prove that you're over 16. So I think it's an issue. There will be definitely underage kids that will slip through the cracks. There'll be definitely people that are over the age of 16 who get blocked, and that'll be frustrating for them. And I started thinking then about, not that I'm that concerned about them, I suppose, but the kidfluencers, the kids that are under 16 that have got a huge following because they've created this following and they've got products they sell. Maybe their mum and dad are driving that as well, but suddenly those sites should be blocked. You shouldn't be able to access those sites anymore. So again,
there could be a can of worms here.
Absolutely.
Certainly it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail about it today because I know we'll be talking about it a lot more.
And there'll be other governments looking at the Australian government and wondering how they go with this.
Yeah, that's right. So the UK brought it in July. They've got a process for porn sites. France has mandated detailed standards for porn checks. The US has got stuff all over the place with their states, like often happens in the US. And some companies that have got content going into various states have just said, we give up because that state's too hard and it's all too hard to do. We're just going to give up on that. And that's probably more porn sites than it is social media sites. So it's going to be a complicated world going forward about how people access these. And I even know people now who are on Facebook. So my kids that are on Facebook, for example, and I've seen something come up at someone's birthday, one of my kids' friends, and I've gone, hold on, they went to school with you. How come it's showing that they're a couple of years older than you? And that was back when you had to say that you were 13 to get on Facebook.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of kids just put in a fake date of birth, and that was it. So they want to get access to Facebook. So they've got better things in place now. But some of those things hang around.
By putting the wrong year because I just didn't want anyone to steal my date of birth.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So there's other reasons for that too. But yeah. I know. I remember my cousin when he was underage, and my father tells a story about how he was having lunch with his sister, and this young fella popped in and asked this really odd, obscure question about a band in the 60s, and then popped out and then came back in and asked another question that was about something that happened in 1958. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, the answer is this, and he's popped out again. So what he was doing, the site that he was trying to get onto was asking him all these questions that only someone who was over a certain age would have known as the guard, and then he was banging into his porn site.
And of course, that'd be just too easy now because you just go and look it up on another site and get the answers.
Anyway.
Interesting world. That one, as I say, we will talk about that more as it develops.
And thank you very much for tuning in today, folks. That's all we have for you today. There's nothing but crumbs left on this table. We've got to pack up and get out of here. So thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
And those crumbs will go into my smart bin in the very near future, so my wife and I don't have to argue about who takes the bin down.
It's on its way, folks. Smart bins. Just, get ready for that one. Yes, thanks for tuning in once again. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is our tidy little podcast, and we're very proud to bring it to you every week. So make sure you tune in again in another week's time. My name is James Eddy. I've been your host today, and as I say, it's a pleasure to always bring this these podcasts to you, and we look forward to seeing you in another week's time.